Okay, so I realized this is kind of sort of out of the blue for everybody, but I wanted to touch base before I get into the actual draft analysis, saying that this might not be my official return forever, but this is me coming back to have some fun. My buddy Kyle hit me up for a draft and said that somebody dropped right after the draft, and I was like, you know what, I kind of miss it. I want to have a little bit of fun. Put me in, coach. So I took over a team from Jacob as always, and we're going to go ahead and just go over the team that I changed it to, which I made another change for week 2. Okay, yeah, I did end up making more changes for week 2 because somebody dropped something that I wanted initially in the free agency that time that I had. So we're just going to go over everything. The first Pokemon that I saw that Jacob had that I really liked was Calibur. Really good Pokemon. Dragon Dance setup threat, even without Terra, really strong. I really like it. Hits really hard, and everybody preps so hard for Dragon Dance that sometimes whenever you come in with just like a choice banded Icicle Crash or a choice banded Glaive Rush, it is extremely difficult to switch into. It essentially forces people to bring their fairies or their steel types to be able to take it on, which leads perfectly into the next Pokemon that Jacob picked up, which is actually going to be Sneasler. Sneasler's really fast, gives really good speed to the team, but also gives pivoting as well as a way to force in other typings that Calibur might be able to take advantage of. For example, Bulky Ghosts. Bulky Ghosts can't really do a whole lot to Calibur, especially if I'm like a sub DD set. But you get what I'm saying. It at least forces in a Bulky Ghost, which I have the ability to take advantage of with my Sneasler. Which also leads into the third Pokemon I'm able to take advantage of with my Calibur. Which leads into the third Pokemon, which is actually going to be King Gambit. This is how I really want to take advantage of those Bulky Ghosts or the Bulky Psychics that could come in with Sneasler. I U-turn out on them, expecting them to come in, drop in King Gambit, set up an SD, and then with Supreme Overlord, if it's late in the game and I have 4 Pokemon dead because I would have had to use, it's actually able to sweep teams all on its own, and it's very bulky. I've seen Addison use this thing to great success. I have seen so many people use this Pokemon to great success, but this Pokemon is very cool, very strong. I like it a lot. Next up, one of the Pokemon that I picked up in the free agency was Smeargle. Now, I picked up Smeargle because Jacob did not have the best hazard options whenever I took over the team. He had, I believe it was King Gambit and like one other thing for Stealth Rocks maybe. It was a Whiscash and then a Hisuian Arcanine were the other 2 Stealth Rockers. So very offensive Stealth Rockers, which I wasn't really the biggest fan of. But with Smeargle, that gives me access to pretty much everything in the game. It gives me access to Ceaseless Edge for spikes. It gives me access to Sticky Webs. It gives me access to Stone Axe for rocks. It gives me a Spinner, which Jacob also didn't have that many hazard removal options. He only had Regieleki whenever I took over the team. No. He just had Regieleki, but this also gives me a Spinner, it gives me a Defogger. This gives me so much that I'm able to kind of just play around with, and with it only being 2 points, I'm also able to use it as a Terra Captain, which I made my Terra Ghost, Fairy, and Dark, I believe. I did Dark specifically so that way I could be immune to Prankster if I'm against something like a Grimmsnarl. I'm able to Prankster, I'm able to get up like a Spore. I'm able to do anything without being taunted. That's why I did Dark. Ghost for the spin blocker, and then Fairy just because it's a good like neutral typing. I just wanted to have good ways of getting up hazards if I was like, the hazard options that I have don't really look good, but I want to at least get something up while potentially breaking a Sash or something along those lines. I've also seen very cool sets with things like Burning Bulwark, Encore. One of the sets that I was actually considering for my week 1 was super cool. It had like multiple hazard options with Encore and Burning Bulwark and Endeavor. Like it has so many cool things it can do. So I'm really excited for it. The next Pokemon that I picked up is that I didn't pick up, I took it from Jacob, is going to be Hisuian Zoroark. Now, Hisuian Zoroark is extremely cool because it gives me something that I love doing with Zoroark, and that's making the illusion something that forces in what Zoroark can break very easily. So what I mean by that with Illusion, if I disguise it as Sneasler, for example, Sneasler is very, very, very hard walled by ghosts and psychic types. So 9 times out of 10, the psychic type or the ghost type is going to be coming in, which allows me to get off a very strong shadow ball with my Zoroark. It's also pretty walled by ground types, which gives me access to Grass Knot to be able to break the ground types, which is really good for a later Pokemon. Ultimately, this just gives a lot of mind games with it, and it gives me a special breaker that up until this point the team did not have. So I definitely did not want to get rid of Hisuian Zoroark. I think it is very, very cool, and I'm very excited to use it. The next one I picked up was Anamorous Therian. Anamorous Therian is a unique individual, to say the least, but there weren't very many good fairies left over in the pool. There was like this and like Alcremie. So I couldn't really drop Anamorous Therian because I have to have a bulky fairy type on my drafts. I have to, like, bulky fairies, bulky psychics, and bulky waters are like what I'm most comfortable with. And Anamorous Therian is unique because it does the bulky fairy walls doing very good at offensive and setup threats with Double Dance, Draining Kiss, gets access to Tailwind, so a lot of really fun sets that it can with, but I don't hate it. I do hate the fact that on a fairy type, I'm not able to use leftovers very reliably because it's also a fairy type, so I have to run heavy duty boots a lot of times on it, but that's kind of just the way it works. But the next thing that I decided to keep was Mesprit. Of course, I kept Mesprit. I feel like if you've been on this channel for any longer than 6 months, well, I guess I can't really say that now because I haven't uploaded in a very long time, but Mesprit is kind of like one of my channel mascots, I would say. I draft it every single time I can. That and Vaporeon. I draft every single time I can because they're just so reliable at what they do. Being bulky, taking a few hits, pivoting around, getting up hazards, getting off a Healing Wish here and there. Like, it's good at what it does. And I love Mesprit. It's perfect. It also gives me a ground immunity, which is really big for my Sneasler and my King Gambit. So the next thing that I decided to pick up was Swampert. Now this gives me a ground type, which before this, the ground type that Jacob had was Whiscash, which is, como se dice, not good. But this gives me a rocker, a flip turner. It gives me really, really good bulk. That's the other thing that I really liked with this. Up until now, I've got good offense, right? I've got Calibur, Sneasler, King Gambit, Hisuian, Zoroark. They're all pretty good offensively. Even Anamorous Therian is pretty good offensively, but I wanted Swampert specifically because it gives me a good tank that I can send in. I'm going to be running Rindo Berry a lot because it's just a consistently good item on something that has very few weaknesses. I do really like Swampert a lot. I think it's phenomenal. Next, one of the things that I actually decided to keep was Regieleki. If you know anything about me, I love Regieleki, primarily because I think it is the funniest Pokemon in the world in team prep, because people either respect the hell out of it and bring a ground type, or they disrespect it, don't bring a ground type, and then you just get free damage off on everything. It is absolutely hilarious to me. And if you don't have a top tier ground type, then you're forced to bring a ground type that is suboptimal versus me. Like, for example, one of the people in the league, they have their ground type is a Gligar. Like, do you really want to bring a Gligar versus me whenever I have a Calibur and Swampert, and then spoiler alert, the next thing I pick up is a Hisuian Avalugg? So I have a lot of really good options. So we'll just move right on, and this also gives me a spinner, which I need at this point because right now Smeargle is the only hazard removal option I have. But I also did pick up Hisuian Avalugg. Hisuian Avalugg gives me another spinner, it gives me another rocker, but this Pokemon, I don't care what anybody says, okay? Hisuian Avalugg is so good. It is so good. Even though it doesn't have the best bulk, it is so unbelievably good. Having the ability to just tank any physical hit in the entire world uninvested makes it so good. And this one gets access to Sturdy, so it's able to pretty much live anything. It's a little bit stronger than regular Avalugg, so I'm able to tank hits like crazy while also dishing out a little bit more damage. This is also going to be one of my Terra captains. I made it Terra, Water, Fairy, and Ghost, I think, for spin block. Terra Water because it's just and Terra Water and Fairy are just generic, good, bulky typings. And then the final Pokemon that I picked up was actually Veluza. Now, Veluza, spoiler alert, I will be dropping Veluza and Anamorous for week 2 for a Sylveon and a Diplin. I did pick Veluza because I really like the idea of being able to Terra it, because its typing is what makes it so difficult to set up a Fillet Away with a Citrus Berry. But if you're able to change your typing depending on what your opponent has in, you're able to resist hits a lot easier. You're able to set up a Fillet Away, get up a +2/+2, and then sweep people with Sharpness, Aqua Cutter, with Stored Power, things like that. I needed Sylveon, so it had to go, and everything else on the team is just way too valuable. Like Hisuian Avalugg I might have been able to do with getting rid of, but I really wanted to have the spinner that wasn't Regieleki, because sometimes Regieleki is just not a good spinner. I really like Veluza. I want to use it one day. I think it has a lot of potential, especially in a Terra format. That is going to be the team that we're going to be using for this season. I'm super excited for it. I'm playing week 1 tonight, so I guess I shouldn't have said my week 1 strategy, but I don't really care because whatever. He preps for it. But I really like this team. I think it'll be a lot of fun because it has a lot of Pokemon that I haven't ever used before, like King Gambit, Calibur, Zoroark, along with some of my all-time favorites like Sylveon, Mesprit, Regieleki. Well, Sylveon make 2, but either way, that is going to be the team. We are going to go ahead and we're going to end it here so we can get into week 1, which will be going up next week. Thank you all very much for watching. Bye-bye.